You know what's really good?
Hello, hello, hello. Ronald and Robbie wanted to say hi too.
Hi. Bye. Dad.
All right. Good evening, everybody. So, February is Heart Health Month. And so, today I felt like it was timely for us to kind of talk about high blood pressure or what we call hypertension. So, we're going to go ahead and get started. So before we discuss or understand why blood pressure is important, you have to understand what the function of blood is. So we wake up every day, we walk around, and we don't really realize like how our body is just keeping us alive, and it kind of functions on its own. It knows exactly what to do to keep us functioning. And so one of the things that has to happen in us for us to be alive and to do the work that God calls us to do is for our blood to be pumping through our veins. Like blood is life. So blood has many different functions, but one of the most important functions of blood is to transport oxygen and nutrients to the lungs and to the tissues and cells. In addition, blood also forms blood clots, and it also has carries cells that are and antibodies that help us to fight infection, that we've talked about a lot before. But basically, you need blood for your cells, for your tissues to live. And so that's a very important job. And so the job of the heart is to pump the blood throughout your body to get that much needed oxygen and nutrients to your cells and organs. And so your heart takes that job very seriously. And it's actually one of the most, if not the most important organ in your body, because without your heart, you can't live. Without your heart, you don't get the nutrients and the oxygen that you need. And so that's why there's a whole month dedicated to us talking about our heart and us taking care of our heart. So how that relates to high blood pressure or hypertension is basically high blood pressure is a common condition in which the long-term force of the blood against your artery walls, and your arteries are pretty much like the highways or the vessels that's utilized that your blood travels through, is that pressure or that force is high enough so that it can eventually cause health problems such as heart disease. And so that's why when I say that hypertension or high blood pressure is killing us softly, it really is, because it doesn't, when you have high blood pressure, you don't immediately feel the long-term effects or even short-term effects of it. Some people feel like they could tell their blood pressure is high if you have a headache. And once you get to that point, it is extremely problematic, but there's several things that lead us to have hypertension or high blood pressure. But for 95% of the population that has high blood pressure, or what they call essential hypertension, it's a mystery. We don't really know exactly what it is that causes people to have hypertension. For 95% of the people, we don't know exactly why they have hypertension. And for 5% of the people, it's directly related to some other type of disease or as an after effect of a disease like kidney disease. But for most of us, we don't know why people have high blood pressure. But what we do know is the risk factors for it. And we do know that high blood pressure tends to run in families and is more likely to affect men than women. We also know that age and race also plays a role. In the United States, Blacks are twice as likely as whites to have high blood pressure, although that gap begins to narrow around age 44. But after age 65, Black women have the highest incidence of high blood pressure. Again, Black women, we pretty much we wear the weight of the world on our shoulders, and that's probably why we have high blood pressure. But I wanted to talk about a patient that I had that was coming into the pharmacy, and he had to probably be like 25, 26, 27 years old, around that age. A young man trying to get a job with the fire department, and he was adamant about trying to control his blood pressure. Every week he was coming in, like every other day, coming into the pharmacy trying to get his blood pressure taken, because we have a blood pressure machine in the pharmacy. Until I eventually let him know that his insurance company will pay for him to have a blood pressure monitor. So if you are on blood pressure medications, talk to your doctor and your pharmacist about getting a home blood pressure monitor. Because again, a lot of times you're not going to be able to feel it. The only way you can tell if your blood pressure is elevated is by taking a reading. And so he was so diligent about trying to control his blood pressure, because he needed his blood pressure to be controlled in order to pass the physical to get the job. And so it kind of goes into this whole concept of when, again, just like how a lot of people are getting the COVID vaccine because their job is requiring it. Is it a bad thing that employers, the government, are putting these type of health conditions or utilizing employment to motivate people to take care of their health? Is it necessary? And I just really, he is the most motivated patient that I've had in years, trying to control his blood pressure because he was he's trying to get a job. And so I want all of you all that are listening today, if you know that you have been diagnosed with high blood pressure, I want you to treat it like your life depends on it. Treat it like your livelihood depends on it, just like how this young man, has been actively trying to manage his blood pressure. So I just wanted to describe what high blood pressure is. And so basically it's the pressure against the blood against the arterial walls. And so how do you know if you are at risk for high blood pressure? And there's several factors that I already mentioned, because pretty much controlling your blood pressure is the best way to control your blood pressure is to mitigate your risk factors. So some of the risk factors the two things that we can't control is your age and your race. I already talked about older adults and how they're at risk, more at risk. And we also talked about how Black people are more at risk. So those risk factors alone, again, is just encourages us to be more diligent about knowing what our blood pressure is. I hope by the time you leave this episode tonight, you realize that it's so important for you to just know what your blood pressure is at any age. Because the way that we're seeing it now, it doesn't matter how young you are, you can still suffer from high blood pressure. Some other risk factors are being overweight or obese. We don't like to talk about it, but most Black people, most of us, we are off the charts. We are not within the normal range. Our BMI is basically telling us that we are overweight or obese, and we have to do something about it. Not being physically active. So people that don't get exercise, they tend to have higher heart rates. And what that means is that your heart is beating faster to try to working harder to get that oxygen and the nutrients to your organs. And so when you're physically active, your heart doesn't have to work as hard. Using tobacco. And we're not just talking about smoking or chewing tobacco, because those things temporarily raise your blood pressure anyway. You know what else temporarily raises your blood pressure? Crack. And, everybody's talking about Joe Biden trying to give out crack pipes, but, that's harm reduction. And, I say we meet the people where they are. We're trying to mitigate diseases, and we're trying to make sure that the people stay safe. We know that we can't control whether or not they're going to be on drugs. Get on the crack pipe so that we can control herpes. And then I hope at the same time we're talking about why they're addicted in the first place. But anywho, in addition to tobacco and hookah, so that's the new trend now. Young people like going to smoke hookah, and then over time you see your blood pressure just being higher and higher. Too much salt or sodium in your diet can cause your body to retain fluid, and that also increases your blood pressure. There is a theory called the slavery theory that talks about the fact that Africans that came across the Middle Passage and the descendants of Africans that came across the Middle Passage may be more prone for high blood pressure because our ancestors had to retain sodium in order to survive that Middle Passage. There's studies based on that. There's studies that help to prove that fact, and there's also studies that refute it. I'm just putting the bug out there so you can take a look at it. Black History Month is every day of the year, though, for me and my family. So just take a look at that. And last but not least, actually two more things that put you at risk. Too little potassium in your diet. So not only is too much salt, but if you don't have enough potassium, then that can put you at risk for high blood pressure. And so when you think about what foods have potassium in it, as I was preparing for this, I'm like, what foods have potassium in it? What we usually think about is like bananas, but it's a lot of foods that you can get potassium from, including like cooked spinach, cooked broccoli, certain fish like halibut and tuna. There's a lot of good sources of potassium. A good baked potato or sweet potato, all of those things you can get potassium for. And last but not least is drinking too much alcohol. And again, if you're a heavy drinker, own it, because what we're supposed to be doing, if you're a man, 1 drink per day. If you're a woman, 2 drinks for a man and 1 drink for a woman. And then, we can discuss exactly what that means. But too much alcohol or exceeding those daily limits every day can also affect your blood pressure. So if you can make small changes in just those risk factors, that can help you to manage your blood pressure as it is right now. But if the best thing that you can do to manage your blood pressure is to recognize your stress and to manage your stress. High levels of stress can lead to a temporary increase in blood pressure. And some of us are living lives that you don't even realize that you're stressed because you're in a constant state of stress. Oppressed people are in a constant state of stress. And so we need to recognize that we're stressed and do something to relieve that stress. So as we're doing all of these things, there's several small things that we can do to control our blood pressure. But if you find yourself at a point where you've gone to a doctor's appointment and you get 2 back-to-back readings of elevated blood pressure, and elevated blood pressure is anything over 120/80. We have gotten so used to having high blood pressure that we try to make up situations where, my blood pressure is not high. It's usually 145/90. No, that's high. And maintaining that high blood pressure is going to cause damage to your organs later. So that's why you need to know your numbers and know what things you need to do to decrease your risk of long-term chronic hypertension. So, and the reason why that we are talking about this is because I'm going to leave you with what can happen to you when you don't properly control your blood pressure. 1, heart attack. That's why so many of us and so many family members we know, you think that they just died suddenly from a heart attack, but they may have had elevated blood pressure that they didn't know about because they didn't really know their numbers. Other risk factors include kidney disease, heart failure, stroke, vision loss. A lot of times, sometimes, we just kind of feel like as we're getting older, I got to get readers now. I'm just waiting on a moment where that's going to happen. It hasn't happened to me yet, knock on wood, but I know I'm approaching it. But vision loss slowly over time can be caused by elevated blood pressure. Sexual dysfunction. There's all type of sex pills available at the gas stations. And men, if you were just controlling your blood pressure, then you wouldn't have to try to get the Rhino, the big one, red pill in the gas station, or trying to get Viagra if you are taking the time now to control your blood pressure. Angina or heart pain is also a long-term effect of blood pressure. Sometimes, as we're walking around, you constantly have a pain in your chest. That's not normal. I think so many of us, we are so used to just walking around with our bodies in distress. And I just want to let you know that that's not normal. Take a look at it. Talk to your doctor, talk to your pharmacist, and figure out what is going on. And last but not least is peripheral arterial disease. And that means basically narrowing of the arteries in your legs, arms, stomach, and your head. And it causes just this generalized pain all over your body, or just overall just feeling tired all the time. We can't accept those symptoms as something that's normal. If you're not feeling well, if you just kind of feel sluggish all the time, check your blood pressure and see what is going on. And I want to thank everybody that have joined tonight. I saw that there's a couple of people in the chat. Hey, Keisha, Valerie, my classmate, and Angela Young, Sora. Thank you so much. You asked the question, are there diets that should be avoided? And not really, no. So especially as it relates to blood pressure, for overall health, we could talk more about that. But as it relates to blood pressure, what you want to be managing is your sodium. Looking at decreasing your sodium intake, staying away from frozen foods. A lot of times we think that, we get those, Weight Watchers meals, and, we drinking soup because we're trying to lose weight. Those things are high in sodium. Processed meats like bacon, sausage, all of those things are high in sodium. Cup of noodles, those items, high in sodium. So look at the label and look at the sodium intake and just try to be conscious of that. And again, if you don't walk away with anything else, get some more potassium in your diet. Because, sometimes you're going to want extra hot sauce. I hope you're not adding salt to your food, but if you are, that's a bad habit. Please stop doing that. Start using some Mrs. Dash seasonings. But if you have enough potassium in your diet, then that can help balance out some of the bad habits that you're doing, like going to happy hour and drinking too many drinks. So I hope you guys learned something today. I know it was a lot of information, but I just want you to know, check your blood pressure. If you don't do anything else for Heart Health Month, go by your nearby pharmacy and check your blood pressure. And if you are on blood pressure meds, it is okay. Take that medicine every single day to control your blood pressure, and talk to your pharmacist about getting a home blood pressure monitor at home. Thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you next week.